Hello and welcome to React Series Part 3, where I'll be talking about React hooks. So in this lesson, I'm going to go over how we can implement hooks, as well as we're going to focus on primarily useState and useEffect hooks and how we can implement it in our function components. So for this lesson, actually, we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to create a simple application where we're going to pull images from NASA's public API to render it in our app, images of Mars from different rover missions. So as you can see here, I'm running simple create React app on localhost 3000 with just welcome Mars h1 tag. So let's go ahead and create our component called Mars. And so what is a hook? Hook is a function that lets you hook into React's state and lifecycle features from function components. So let's say if you have a function component where you want to utilize state, instead of converting the whole component into class, you can actually use hook and actually hook into those functionalities of React. State is being one of them. And we're going to look at a useState and useEffect shortly. So let's go ahead and import them. Import React, as well as useState and useEffect from React module, and let's create a simple function component called Mars, where we're just gonna return a dummy variable so we can just test it out and see if it's getting rendered. Just say hello from Mars, and let's go ahead and export our component. Export default Mars. Let's save that and bring our component to app.js components and get the Mars, and let's render it. All right, so as you can see, we have hello from Mars being rendered. So let's go ahead and implement state into our function component and see how we can access it and change it. So in previous lesson, I went over how we can implement state in class component. We had two methods, either within the constructor or having a state object and declaring different, like let's say variables called max, like that's how we used to create a state. But with function components, we're going to actually utilize useState hook. And so useState hook needs to be within function component before return. Well, it doesn't have to be before return, but we're just going to put it there. Let's say we're going to have a rover's name where we want to display the rover's name. So as a state. So we're going to declare it first. And we're going to destructure the useState. So the useState is going to return two entities, one being a variable and one being a function. So in this case, we're going to have a name and we're going to have the verb set name. That's how we're going to name it. And we're going to destructure the useState. useState. And useState function within the parentheses, we're going to actually declare the initial state. In this case, initial state being, let's say, initial state is opportunity. So, opportunity. That's the name of the initial rover. All right. And let's go ahead and change the name to rover. And we're going to access the state variable by within the curly brackets. So we're going to say curly brackets name, and let's save that. And as you can see, the opportunity is being displayed. So that's how we can access state variable. So how we can change it, because the main thing that we use state is to actually react to user interaction. So in this case, let's say we have an input box. Let me just have a parent div tag so it doesn't give us an error. Let's say we have a rover name and we want to change it to, let's say we want to name our rover. How we can do that? So let's have an input tag so we can display our new name. So in this case, we're gonna have an input tag, and on change, we're gonna call the set name function. We're gonna call the set name function, but before that, since input tag is a HTML tag that stores its own state, we're gonna actually access the event within an input tag. Event being our keystrokes, and we're gonna use the set name function, and we're gonna capture the event dot target dot value, and we're gonna make it equal to name. So that's what the set name function does. It actually you can pass a value that you want to change to the initial name tag. All right, let's save that. And as you can see, we have the initial state being opportunity. And if we name it to, let's say, rover Alex, I don't know. As you can see, it's just being changed. The state is being changed as soon as we typing in a new name into the input tag. So that's how we manage state within function component. All right, so let's go ahead and move to our project where I will be talking about how we can actually retrieve data and based on that data render different images and different information within our function component. So to do that, let's go ahead to NASA's public API. You can generate the API key by just filling this short form, and we're gonna actually use Mars Rover Photos API. So we have an example query here where we can test it out with a demo key. I think demo key has about maybe 30 calls, and after that it's just gonna expire. So I highly suggest just generating your own API key. So let's just test it out and see what kind of information we're gonna get back from the public API. To do that, I'm gonna just use Postman, and let's just make a new call, and let's paste that. And there are different parameters that we can play around with, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. All right, so if we go ahead and send that, as you can see, we are getting an information back. We're getting the image URL, we're getting the ID, we're getting the camera name, and different data, a rover ID, rover name, in this case Curiosity, and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and work on our app. To do that, we're gonna actually create a new component. Let's call it const Mars image. And it's going to be a function component. You can only use hooks within the function component. I mean, it doesn't really make sense to use them in class components anyway. All right, so in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to retrieve different Mars rover images, and we're going to display random images from the set that we receive. So in this case, we'll have like as you can see, we have a lot of images being returned. So we'll just have a button where we're gonna click it, and we're just gonna be a random image being displayed. All right, so for that we need actually need to define two states, one to store the JSON that we receive, and another one to store the random image generator. All right, to do that, let's do const data and set data equals useState, and the initial state will be just empty array. So that's the data we're going to receive. For now, it's just empty array. And the next one is we're going to define num and set num to useState, and the initial random number will be 0 in this case. So we're just gonna get the first value with a 0 index, and and we're gonna have a button that will generate a random number, and we're gonna just access based on that index. All right, so how can we retrieve data? That's where useEffect comes from. So useEffect hook lets you perform so-called side effects in function components, and one of the side effects is actually fetching data, and that's what we're going to utilize today. So let's do useEffect. It is a function, and let's go ahead and pass an anonymous function to it, and let's go ahead and fetch our data. So in this case, you need two things. You need your key, and you need the URL. So we can have different parameters that we can pass. So in this case, I'll be passing my own key, which I have to import for first. But let's go ahead and copy the URL. I just don't want to display my own key because you can easily generate it. So I have it stored within the components, but it's just a string, a very long string. But so we're just gonna retrieve one page. One page will have about 25 pictures with different information, and we're gonna use sol 1 as well. And when it comes to API key equals, you just copy and paste whatever API key was generated in the NASA's page. All right, let me just go ahead and import my key so I can actually utilize it. So we're gonna have const key equals require Let me go to key and get the key. All right, so we're gonna fetch the data first, and then it's gonna return a promise. So we're gonna get the response and parse it to JSON. So res.json, and after that we're gonna get our JSON object, and we're gonna store it to our data state. So we're gonna use the same method. In this case, it was set name, but for the Mars image, we're gonna do set data. We're gonna say set data, and we're gonna do data.photos. Photos is an array of objects, so we're just gonna set the array to initial array, to empty array. All right, and to prevent it from firing multiple times, to prevent an infinite loop, we actually have to pass an empty array as well. Okay, so that's how we fetch data and assign it to our state. After we get the data, let's create the function to generate random images between 0 and the size of the array. In this case, it's going to be between 0 and 24. For us to, we're going to basically use the numbers between 0 and 24 randomly to get the random images and get the information that's related to that image. So let's go ahead and create call function random, and we're gonna actually generate our random number. So minimum will be 0, and the max number will be data dot length minus 1. So it's gonna be 0, index is 0 to 24. That's gonna be 25 images in total. And we're gonna say const rand equals math.floor, and we're gonna use math.random to generate the random number between a max and a min plus 1 plus min. So that's how we generate the random number between 0 and 24. Okay, and now let's use our setNum method to set the random number to a num state that we're gonna implement, that we're gonna use later. All right, so after that, let's go ahead and actually render our component. So we're gonna do return, and we're just gonna have a div, a parent div. Okay, let me just put it like this. Let me just save that. All right, and so since we have retrieved the data, we're gonna use a map function to go through every single image within our array and pull out the random one and display it in our component. So let's do that. Within the curly brackets, we're gonna do data dot map, and we're gonna actually retrieve two things. We're gonna retrieve the image, and we're gonna get the index as well. So we're gonna get the index, and let's go ahead and return the function. So if image index equals num, the random number, we're gonna return. In this case, let's just return a function to avoid using too many divs. Okay. So we're gonna return div with a class name equals image container, and all the styling that I used will be included in the URL in the description, so you can just download it, and the styling will be the same for our container and for our buttons in alignment. So we'll have an image container. That's where we're gonna actually render our image. So let's go ahead and have an image tag. We don't actually need the closing one. So we'll have an image tag, and we're gonna need a key. React requires every single element to have a key. So in this case, the key will be our index. And the class name, I'm gonna use display, so we can render the image in right dimensions. And we have to have an alt. In this case, let's just have an empty string. And of course, the most important one, the source. So the source will be image dot image crc. So image crc is a property of the object that of the JSON object that we're receiving. So if we go ahead and look at our Postman request, that's where we're getting the image source. So this is the image source. We're retrieving the URL so we can use it to display the image. Okay, let's go ahead and save that. Also, we're gonna have some information about the rover and when it was taken, what camera was used, and what index we were actually what index of an image that we're using. So let's go ahead and have another div. Okay. So we'll have a couple paragraphs. So this one will be a rover name. So which rover took the image. So to access that information, we're going to do rover image dot rover dot name. Okay, let's just copy and paste it a couple times. And we're gonna also have a camera image dot camera dot name. We'll have picture date, when it was taken, the date it was taken based on Earth date, since Mars have different dates like sols. We're just gonna use the picture was taken when it was taken on Earth. So picture date will be image dot Earth date. Earth date. And for our use, let's go ahead and see what indexes we are accessing. So we're going to do index, and we're just going to pull the index. Let's go ahead and say actually num. All right. Let's go ahead and save that, and let's see our app. Oh, for now, it's actually not being rendered. Let's go ahead and export it. Since we have default export already, we have to use a named export and save that. And let's go ahead and pull our Mars image from Mars component, and let's render it under Mars. So Mars image. Save that. And as you can see, we're just accessing the index 0 since this is our initial state, and we are successfully retrieving data. So we have the image, we have the rover name, the camera name, and the picture data. For now, it's not displaying anything, but let's see. Earth date. Earth date. It should be date, not data. Here we go. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do is actually have a button so we can press it and access random images that we're receiving from NASA's public API. All right, so let's go ahead and create that button. So we're gonna have the button under the image display. Let's go ahead and say button. And when it's clicked, we're gonna use we're gonna call random. And the random is actually gonna change the state of the num to the random variable between 0 and 24. And the num is going to be used for our mapping purposes right here. So that's how we're going to access a random image. All right, so let's just name it change image. Let's save that. And as you can see, we have the change image button, and when we press it, change image on click. Random. Let's refresh that. Something's wrong. Let's see what's wrong. Nope, this is not it. Let me just comment this out so we don't have too many things going on. Let's see. on click, we're gonna call random. Set num, that should be fine. Initial state is 0. Set num rand. What might be wrong? Index equals num. Open a mapping. I'm getting the images. Actually, on click. Yeah, it's supposed to work. Let's see. Interesting. What am I doing wrong? We are exporting it. We're using on click. We have the button. We're calling the rand. Should I just log the num and see if the number is being changed? Interesting. So we have the state, getting the data. We are using set num. Oh, we're not assigning the random. We have to use random. Let's go ahead and refresh. Let me close this. Yep, and here we go. I forgot to use the random number generator. But yeah, as you can see, we're getting different indexes with the data about the picture and the picture itself. So that's how we utilize useState and useEffect in function components. Thank you for watching, and in the next tutorial, I'm going to be going over component lifecycles with class components. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'll make sure to answer them. I'll try to post more regularly this time, and I hope you like it. I hope you enjoy. I'll try to make more of an interesting projects later on. So yeah, I hope you enjoy what's coming next. Yeah, thank you for watching and stay safe.